Okay.
All the following is proven as life extending or being very healthy. 1. Doing sports or physical exercise. 2. Sex. 3. Eating many times a day. 4. Sleeping at least 6 hours a night. Buddhism considers all these ideas bad. How do you explain this?
Very good question, no? Hmm. It's a tough one. Okay. Well, let's start by countering some of these claims. Okay. Sports and physical exercise, a lot of the reason why it's considered to be healthy is because people eat many times a day, for example, and eat, well, let's just say eat too much. Let's start there. Hmm? Um, Also because their bodies tend to operate suboptimally. Hmm? And so that's going to lead to because of the mind. The mind will cause tension in the body, um, will cause overworking of the systems in the body due to hormone releases, based on sex, for example, but just any kind of desire or anger or frustration. This is going to disrupt the bodily systems or overtax them, and so it actually can, lead to buildup of toxins, that kind of thing. Um, and so hence there's the need to exercise. Hmm. Do sports and do exercise. This helps people. But see, all of these studies for all of these things are dealing most likely with people who don't meditate, or maybe do a little bit of meditation but not seriously. You're dealing with ordinary people who consider sports to be their meditation, so it's helpful for them. It's a way of relaxing. Well, good for them. If you practice meditation, especially walking meditation, you'd have to do a study of those people and to see whether sports, whether they were actually lacking something. And I think you'd find that no, indeed, they're not. I mean, ridiculous, because consider the sort of the stereotypical Asian person living on the mountain who lives to be 90 or 100 who never does any sports. I guess in some cases they're doing a lot of physical activity, but in many cases not. In many cases it's just peaceful living, Peaceful living changes so much. That's one thing. So anyway, talking about sports and physical exercise, I think you can challenge that based on a meditative lifestyle, that there's really no reason to require your muscles to be bigger or your cardiovascular system to be worked out. If your mind is in tune with the body, because you will find through meditation that your body functions far more efficiently through meditation. You can feel in the meditation practice that a lot of toxins are being flushed out. Okay, sex. Well, besides the fact that it's a physical activity, I don't know what to say here, because you study the addiction centers in the brain. What you're talking about, I guess, is the release of endorphins, whatever. There's a lot of dopamine, I'm sure. Oxytocin, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot. Yeah, which one? Dopamine is desire, and oxytocin is pleasure. I don't know. I'm sure it's all caught up in there. But you have a serious problem with all of this. Whatever benefit, I don't know that there's any physical benefit to the excretion of dopamine, or the production of dopamine, oxytocin, whatever these chemicals are. I'm not a chemist or a biologist, but I do know, just from listening and of course from practice, that you've got a serious problem here, because you're cultivating addiction. these systems seriously affect the brain in a bad way. They cultivate what we call the addiction cycle. It's studied. The sex leads you to desire more sex, and actually makes you less satisfied. More impatient. This is not theoretical. You can study how this addiction cycle works. It leads to addiction. There's no question. What I think is probably not well researched is what addiction does to you. Or we don't realize. It's like, okay, so I get addicted to sex. It's fine. I'm happy to have an active sex life. But the question is, that's not the question. The question is, what does this addiction cycle do to you? Does it have any negative effects? And I think absolutely it does. It leads to the potential for greater anger and frustration, depression, boredom, and dissatisfaction, inability to, these are all saying the same thing, but basically the inability to stay at peace with yourself. So the idea that sex is, what are you saying about these things? Life extending or being very healthy. Okay, well, let's get back to the life extending thing. Yeah, okay, no, let's not. We have to include it there because life extending is, even from a Buddhist point of view, that's a good thing. Good to live longer. At the expense of your, well, as again, I would say the benefits are purely based on the fact that the person has too much stress in their lives and this is their only outlet. So absolutely, a person who is suppressing their sexual urges and sitting around as a couch potato all the time, this is unhealthy. And so that release is the only way to physically cope with that. It's just a bouncing back and forth. But I would say definitely a person who is able to overcome those things is better off. I would argue will actually have the potential to live longer, but moreover avoids the huge problem of addiction. Sports and exercise is the same. Sports can be quite addictive. And if you don't believe, if you think that's absurd, people who come and meditate can prove it. Any sports person who comes to meditate has a very difficult time sitting still. They're not able to because they have an addiction. And that's going to spill over in your life. It's going to make you jumpy. It's going to make you, somehow require something. Which means that when you're in a position to not be able to indulge in your addiction, you're going to be frustrated. As you get older, if you ever end up being bedridden, it's going to be frustrating. It's going to make you depressed and so on. Definitely, this happens. People who suffer injuries in sports, they become depressed and frustrated and turn to alcohol in extreme cases, but it's a problem. So, which gets to sort of the other part of this answer is that Buddhism isn't so concerned with the body. Living long, good thing. Living long by cultivating addiction, bad thing. If living 100 years means you can cultivate more addiction, then better to die early. It's a horrible thing to say, but you're not doing anything good by living. So, as the Buddha said, yo cawasa satang jiwe apasang utayapayang ekahang jivitang seyo pasang utayapayang. That's not quite the correct grammar. Better it is to live one day, better than to live 100 years not seeing the truth, not seeing arising and ceasing, not seeing the nature of things. Better to live one day having seen this truth. So that's the second, probably the more deep part of this answer. But I don't think these claims should be should be left unchallenged. So number 2. Number 3, eating many times a day. I've heard this, and I've had doctors tell me. Even a Thai doctor told me, he said, I don't want to say bad things about monks, and then he basically went on to say how bad it is that monks only eat in the morning. Again, I want to say that it has to do with people's their lifestyles, but I guess I'd have to look deeper into the science of it. I want to say that eating once a day is great. It feels regular. Eating once a day, just one meal, for example. My guess, my hypothesis is that the digestive cycle works on a 24-hour, something like a 24-hour cycle anyway. You fully digest food. Maybe that's a myth, but as I understood, it was a 24-hour thing. So you get into a very regular cycle, and your bowel movements are regular. Everything seems, quite efficient, eating only one meal a day. But again, the much bigger problem is, could you imagine eating 10 meals a day, for example? I don't know how many meals they say is good, at least 4 or 6 maybe, eating throughout the day. Great, so it's good for your body. What are you, a cow? I mean, what is this how you want to live your life? Live to eat? Problem is addiction. If you eat many times a day, who cares how good it is? It's sort of this, this stereotypical, the cynic who looks at the health nut, a person who obsesses over their food and is all into, everything has this. I mean, I'm pretty particular personally, knowing not to use trans fatty acids and not to, trying to stay away from fried foods. Red meat, meat in general, try to stay away from too much sugar, etc., etc. Chemicals, not wanting to eat stuff if it's pumped full of chemicals. So these, I think, I mean, it feels kind of like a healthy, sort of discrimination. But people can go extreme, and they live their lives, about their food, obsessing over their food. And see some of these people, and they have their raw grains and nuts, and it's heaven for them. This is an obsession. It feels good, but it's an addiction. It's not necessarily that, but simply eating many times a day is encouraging your addiction. So again, we're much more concerned with the mind. You're going to die, but if you die full of lust and greed for food, you might be reborn as a cow or a pig. Look at how pigs eat. They'll eat anything, because they're so caught up in food. Getting caught up in food, very dangerous, mentally, spiritually. Okay. Number 4, sleeping at least 6 hours a night. Now that's the easiest. Obviously that has much to do with the state of mind. A person who is highly stressed out probably needs about 8 hours of sleep, maybe even more. Person who isn't stressed out. I've got a meditator downstairs who I told to sleep 4 hours a night. We have meditators who don't sleep, who practice all day and all night. There's monks do this for months. There's a story, the first verse of the Dhammapada, the background story is about a monk who did this for 3 months. And apropos, he became blind as a result of his practice. He destroyed his eyes, so he really hurt his body. But at the same time, he became an arahat. So they called him Jakupala. Jaku means eye, Bala is guardian. He's one who guarded his eyes. It's a play on words, because there's 2 kinds of eyes: the eye of Dhamma and the physical eye. So he protected the important vision. He gained the vision that was most important and became blind physically. He dispelled his spiritual blindness at the same moment when he losing his physical vision. So, again, two parts to the answer. One, it's certainly, these kinds of studies are dealing with ordinary people who aren't doing intensive meditation. but also not such a big deal to neglect the body in favor of the mind to some extent. And of course, you rely on the body; it's no good dying. But certainly better to die mindful than to live corrupt. So thank you, good question, but we'll have, maybe it's a bit of a disagreement. So anyway.